Hello, beautiful soul. I'm Karina, your Human Design and Alignment Guide.
And I am Skylar Shea, your personal energetic guide, intuitive cheerleader, and high-level professional coach.
And welcome to Raise Your Freak. We created this podcast because we are driven to live to our fullest potential and want to share our experiences and obsessions with the frequency-curious individuals out there. We go live every Friday at 11:11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Zoom, so you can be part of the conversation.
I'm so excited about all of this because I love podcasts, but I always find myself wanting to ask questions. By offering you the opportunity to join us live, this means you can ask your questions in real time.
Each week, you can expect various conversations regarding all things human frequency, as well as support to help you integrate.
We understand the importance of tending to your frequency and engaging in topics as it helps you along your path to expansion and alignment.
Our goal is to help you feel a part of a community as you navigate your journey through this lifetime.
We look forward to connecting with you every week live at our Zoom headquarters, on YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
I think we've covered everything, Skylar.
I think so too.
Okay, let's dive in.
Happy Friday! How
Friday.
are you, Skylar?
I'm so good. I'm so happy to be here. I can't believe we were just talking off the recording, but about how fast this week went by. How are you doing, Karina?
I'm doing so good. I'm doing really good. I'm so happy to be here. I'm really excited about our conversation today. Today we're talking about all things conditioning. This is a big hot topic in human design. This is a big hot topic when it comes to exploring personal development. So I'm really excited to dive into this today. We're gonna explore like where beliefs or where we experience conditioning, how we experience conditioning, how do we decondition, and everything in between. I'm pretty stoked about today.
To start, should we just get into conditioning?
Let's do it.
Let's do a bit of a definition before we dive into the topics that we want to bring up around conditioning today. So if you have missed out on our previous episodes, we've been in the last few weeks really focusing on the power of beliefs, the power of thoughts. And we felt like we need to also discuss before closing this chapter conditioning, because it's such a hot topic right now, and I am not sure if people actually truly understand it or know when people are talking about conditioning or deconditioning, like what are we actually talking about here. So here we'll dissect it. You'll begin to learn why Karina and I are so obsessed with this concept, because we both use modalities to really help support people in getting back to their authenticity, because what conditioning is really all about is gaining beliefs and ideas and behaviors that are ingrained in us through repeated exposure and reinforcement from external influences such as family, culture, education, and media. So these beliefs often form in childhood or become deeply embedded in our subconscious, influencing our thoughts, actions, and decisions. Some of the ways that we operate in the world, whether it started when you were a kid and it was like your goals as to what career you wanted to go into, what education that you received for yourself, your goal of getting married, your goal of having children. It's great that these are all goals that you have. And sometimes we add extra pressure to ourselves, whether it's like timeline pressure, if we haven't received some of these goals that we've desired, or just even getting to a point where all of a sudden you have all these goals, but you're still not happy. And maybe you're getting physically sick. Maybe you're having mental or emotional imbalances. And the reason why this occurs and happens is because often what the problem with conditioning is that it is a societal or a group suggestion for how we are supposed to show up and operate. And in reality, it steps away from the truth of who we really are. And so before getting into the modalities and the support that we use, I just wanted to do a little bit of a nerdy history lesson for us on why conditioning has been so important versus why at this time of our lives we're now acknowledging conditioning for what it is and allowing ourselves to find spaces and places of reconditioning ourselves or deconditioning ourselves. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Industrial Revolution in a very quick bullet point. During the Industrial Revolution, conditioning was essential for creating disciplined workforce. So the schools that were created were done so to help facilitate and move us into the workforce. Most of us that are on this call or that are listening today probably when you were in high school, I know this for myself specifically, it was like if you had the good grades, you went into university. If you didn't have the good grades, you went into the trades. And if you didn't want to go into the trades and you didn't want to go to university, well, tough luck. You're going to be a loser in society. That was, at least for me, and I assume for many of us, what we were conditioned to believe. Like you do one or the other, or you become a recluse and no one's going to like you, or whatever the stories are that get told to you. So now we are stepping out of that and we are becoming more in a technology age. And in reality, we need to actually come back to the authenticity of who we are so that we can truly outperform technology or work with technology in our human nature, in our human ways. And what many healers are aware of, and what I often help people do, is people tend to come to me or have come to me in the past that have physical pain, emotional pain. And when we get to the root of the pain, what the reality is that they're not living in true alignment for themselves. They're living someone else's dreams. They're living someone else's ideas. And the work that I do and the work that Karina does is helping people to not only acknowledge where conditioning is maybe perpetuating a narrative for you or perpetuating a lifestyle for you that isn't actually serving you, and how to come back to your authenticity, how to come back to your true self so that you can release some of this conditioning and actually decide what is that I want for myself. We so much put pressure on ourselves. We so much put fear on ourselves that we're not in the timeline that other people suggest for us. Having kids, like there's many of you that are in this call right now that I know that are in their 30s, early 30s, mid 30s, who are trying to have kids, whether it's your first kid, whether it's your second kid. And there is a level or a sense of anxiety because we've been conditioned to believe that after 30, our eggs are all gone and we can't have kids anymore. And that's just not the truth. There are so many people that I know right now that are in their 40s or even closer to their 50s that are women that are having children. And so these conditioned beliefs that are provided to us, they don't really serve us. And so now let me open the floor to Karina to share with us some of her perspectives around conditioning and what she's seen within her own work.
Yeah, I think everything that you said is so great because we are noticing this shift. And whether it's the Aquarian age that people are, talking about, or within human design, we have global cycles and they last a few hundred years. And we are moving from the cross of planning, which is what we've seen over the past 300 years of structures of the schooling system, hospital, in industry. And we're moving away from that to more of an individualistic, what is correct for me energy and my connection to source. There's a lot of spirituality as we move into the cross of the sleeping phoenix, I believe is what we're moving into in 2027. So I am excited about this time that we're in right now because we're waking up and we're really seeing, well, wait a second, what maybe worked in the past doesn't necessarily work for me now. And we are becoming our own authority. And I think that's that's really empowering. And that's one of the big things that I'm all about is empowering every individual that I come across with to be your own authority. You make your own decisions that you feel are correct for you. And noticing when you're feeling the societal pressure or the family pressure or pressure from teachers, your friends, whoever it is, your employer, that you should be this or this or this, that you're saying, well, wait a second, that doesn't feel correct for me. And then the awareness. So within human design, and if you're like, wait, what's human design? We'll have a link in the show notes where we talk about all things human design. But within human design, conditioning and deconditioning is one of the biggest parts about human design, because you're understanding who you are at your authentic core. And what we know and what we recognize is that who we are at our authentic core and how we experience life through family, through society, how that influences us, we can see where we can experience more conditioning. And the big area that we often look at is our centers. And wherever we are white or undefined, it is said that that's where we can experience a lot of conditioning. So if we have, for example, our ajna or our third eye, which is located in the area between our eyes, if we have that center undefined, that houses our beliefs, what we think, what our ideas are. And maybe when we live in family, for example, our family has one belief and they imprint that on us. And then we leave the family and we grow up and we go on our own. And then we're like, wait a second, I don't think I subscribe to that way of belief. Then you start exploring what your own belief is. So that's the great thing about human design, is understanding who you are. Now, one of the areas that I've been really exploring is we can also experience conditioning within our defined centers. An example of this, manifestors. So they have their throat defined and it's connected to a motor. They just naturally can speak. They know what they want, and an aligned manifestor informs and shares, this is what I want. They are here to act on their impulses. But as children, maybe they were too chatty. And so their parents were saying, be quiet. No, now's not the time. Now's not the time. And what they're doing is they're dimming their light of using their voice, which is actually their authority, to inform. And so you can see how in an area where we are colored in, where we are defined, that we can experience conditioning there. Another example is if we have the emotional center defined. So our emotions, they operate in waves. And when we have our highs and when we have our lows, maybe we're conditioned that it's bad to have big feelings. It's bad to be sad. If you're sad, you need to go away, and you don't know how to handle those emotions. Men are a great example. Think of all the men in the world who have the emotional center defined and they can't express their lows because they're really struggling. So that's, again, another example of how you can experience conditioning in your defined centers. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I can definitely relate and resonate with everything that you've said, knowing what my human design is and knowing what some of my family's human design is as well. And so one of the biggest things that I would say about learning human design and having Karina, for the most part, guide me through it and teach me my design, and also share with me what my partner's design is, what my family's design is, all of that. It gives you the biggest permission slip to be yourself. So in all these times throughout my own life, feeling like I was sort of like the odd one out, or the ugly duckling, or as my family would call me, the party pooper. What I realize now is that my mother is a manifesting generator. My dad is likely a generator. My sister is a manifesting generator, and my brother is likely a manifester with the way that they all present themselves. And I am a projector. So if you know anything about human design, that energy, their energy, is so intense, so full of energy. Karina was talking about the manifestor, how they're like, they talk. Well, they do that. And then if you have the generator connected to you too, then you have this like amazing amount of output and energy as well. And so the projector is more or less someone that observes and is really good at dissecting what they're observing. And yes, they have the energy that they can sort of take from those that they are surrounded by, but they don't have the same output of energy as a generator or a manifesting generator has. And so where I have gone my whole life trying not to be lazy, what I am acknowledging is that, oh, actually there is a gift in this ability to be lazy. And now that I know my human design, I can actually like show up at my parents' house or show up for weekends with my entire family and remove myself from the situation or take rest and not feel guilty about it and not feel like I am not capable. Like there was definitely times that I was sort of like, am I sick? What's wrong with me? Why can't I keep up with the rest of everyone? And when I do keep up with the rest of everyone, why do I burn out, or why do I have an emotional issue happen where everyone else is totally fine? Well, learning my human design, it's allowed me to acknowledge where that conditioning laid in my own family. And so a friend of ours who's also a healer, and she supports me sometimes too, she was reaching out to me the other day and asking me about my human design, and she's a manifesting generator. And so she's like, "You're a manifesting generator, right?" And then she's like, "Oh, wait, no, you're a projector." And then was confused why she would have even thought I was a manifesting generator. And I was like, well, funny you mentioned that. Like, that is where my deconditioning lies, because even in the way that I sometimes show up in my business, and especially at the beginning of my business, like offering so many different offers, so many different modalities, like that was all coming from a place of a learnt way of operating and not the true authentic way of me needing to operate for my most successful version of self.
Yeah, I think it's using the projector as an example, because generators and manifesting generators combined. So the one thing we have in common is the sacral center defined, which gives us a generator, self-sustaining power and energy. We make up 70% of the population. So it's fair to say that we live in a generator world. And what that means is that we live in a world where there's a lot of energy to work. This is a lot of people who are more than comfortable of doing the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, doing the overtime, doing all the work, because there's 70% of us that do that. So a big conditioning or a big deconditioning that projectors need to go through is understanding that it's okay that you, one, feel like you can't keep up, or two, that you can actually be successful working less. And it's like, wait a second, that's wrong. That doesn't make sense. It's like, no, it's possible. It is possible for you to work less and be more successful in whatever success looks to you. And so as a collective, that's a big example of how the collective can condition 20% of the people, which projectors are. So
another thing, even for this was happening with a client of mine this week who's a manifesting generator. And so she is in a space or a place right now where she's creating something new, and she has a ton of energy for it. She has a ton of excitement for it, and she's nose to the ground in it. But one of her patternings is that sometimes she goes so into the work that she forgets to come up for air until it's like almost too late. And the conditioning of society, where it's like productivity is doing and not being. And that is like one of the biggest things that I, as a projector, have to learn for myself, then get to help teach others too, and how that gets to actually look and work for them, even if they are these manifesting generators or generators that have tons of output and tons of energy. Well, there's a twofold here. There's one that if you're not in alignment as a generator or a manifesting generator, if your work isn't in alignment for you, you're not going to have that renewable energy source. So if you're listening to this and you're like, I am a generator, but I'm exhausted all the time. Like, what are they talking about renewable energy? Well, maybe consider like, what is it that you're showing up for on a daily basis that isn't bringing you that inspiration, that love, that excitement, and where can you lean into more of that excitement for yourself and that love for yourself? And then for especially the manifesting generators who have like, and generators who have all this disposable energy and you are in alignment, you trick yourselves sometimes too, though, in thinking that if I'm working diligently on this, then this is good, this is productive. And in reality, yes, to a certain extent, but are you neglecting all the other areas of your life? And if you are neglecting all the other areas of your life, why are you doing that? Is it because you actually have more of a fear that if you don't focus on this, then it's not going to bring in money, or it's not going to do X, Y, and Z? And so then you're actually missing the true alignment. And what needs to be shifted is having a greater trust in your process, a greater or whatever it may be. And so that's where like the minutia of learning about your human design is incredible. Doing the work to decondition yourself, though, that's where actually the work comes in. And that's why like modalities such as hypnotherapy, as we've discussed in previous episodes, or anything to do with changing the neural pathways in your brain is going to be really supportive and complementary to doing this deconditioning. Because what most people, I am sure, and you can attest to this, Karina, when you tell most people that they're projectors, most people's responses are probably, are you sure you got this right? Like that doesn't resonate with me.
Yeah. And then it's that, and then it's like after a few days, there's usually like this form of relief of like, holy shit, I feel seen. Like, oh, and then it's like they start, because I think at first there's that resistance, because whether it's like it's conditioning or it's ego or whatever it is, I'm like, no, I'm a hard worker. I'm a hard worker. And it's like, no, this has nothing to do with if you're a hard worker or not. It's, are you honoring your energy system? Are you being aligned with that? That's what this is all about. I know there are some of the most successful people in the world that are projectors, and they're successful because they know how to manage their energy. They honor who they are. And that is, to me, that's the ticket right there.
The 9 to 5 work week, like as we were talking about in the beginning with the Industrial Revolution, the 9 to 5 work week was created within the Industrial Revolution and was arguably created by a whole bunch of generators who that style
1000%.
is very effective. And for projectors, it's not that we don't have days where we work like 10 hours in the full day or whatever, or even longer than that. But what our ability and gift is, and if we have the capability and space to do this for ourselves, it's acknowledging like, oh, if I'm tired right now, if I'm depleted right now, like, let me go for a walk. Let me get into nature. Let me do something to replenish and restore my energy so that when I come back into the work, then I am going to be so much faster at it because I've given my energy the space to breathe that it needed to allow me to get what most people can get done in 5, 6, 10 hours in 3 hours. And so another perspective too of the difference between like how a projector mind works versus how a generator or manifesting generator mind works. And this was an example that a friend just was sharing with me unintentionally a couple days ago, and she's in school for osteopathy. And so she's a projector and her friend is a manifesting generator. And so her friend is sharing a book with her, and there's a topic that they're learning about, and her friends had to get the book because she wanted to learn more about the topic. And she was really like going into dissecting all the information about the topic. And the projector friend is like, oh, okay, I love all the nuanced ways that you got to this, but this is what we need to learn. This is what we need to know. I don't need to know all this nuanced stuff. I don't want to know all this nuanced stuff.
Yeah.
I just want to have the information that I need to regurgitate for when I do my test so that I am successful in my test. And the manifesting generator needed to get to all the nuances to be able to remember that point. And so two totally different ways of even dissecting energy that are both so perfect, but whereas the projector would have at one point been like, oh no, like I'm not studying enough, I'm not learning the material, she's able to sit and acknowledge like, oh, we've come to the same conclusion, we've just gotten there very different ways. I got there in 10 minutes and you got there in 3 hours. Neither are wrong, but it's just that's a perfect example of how we are all our own individual people and we can be doing the exact same task, but it's okay that it's going to take someone a lot longer than the other. It doesn't mean that one's wrong or bad. It just means that you're honoring how you're supposed to show up in your energy to get your most successful outcome.
Yeah. You know, at the end of the day, when we talk about conditioning, what we're talking about is, and we had touched on this at the beginning, this is about you seeing yourself for who you are and honoring who you are. And here's the reality of it all. It's not as though you're going to go through a deconditioning process and then you come to the end and you're like, oh, I have fully deconditioned. That's not how it goes. We are constantly being conditioned, whether it's subtly through fashion. This is what you wear if you're cool. This is what you eat when you're healthy. This is how you should be exercising. These are super subtle ways that we can experience conditioning. The key is to be discerning and saying, what conditioning do I want for myself? What feels correct for me? So by using a modality like human design, for example, it's literally on paper. This is who your energy is. Now you can decide, do I want to feel like I am in alignment with who I am? Do I want to live life with joy and purpose and expansion? Or do I not care? And I'm just going to live life day to day. That's your choice. You have that choice to make. And that's why exploring conditioning can be really helpful because it gives you awareness.
What is one of the things for you when learning human design that was like that permission slip for you, or realizing that you were operating in conditioning and needed to decondition something about yourself?
Ooh, that's a great question. A big area was my beliefs. I know I talked on that a lot because I have the crown, which is the top of your head, and your ajna center undefined. So what that means is I'm here to be open to explore topics, ideas, beliefs, but I'm to remain open-minded. So I'm not meant to close my mind and stick to any one belief unless I feel like it's correct for me. But that can feel very overwhelming at times. That goes hand in hand with having those centers undefined. But giving myself that permission, even unconsciously before I even came into human design, recognizing, oh, I don't necessarily subscribe to this belief, so I'm going to explore what I want. Another area that gave me such a permission slip is how I learn, and that's my profile. So especially my third line, I've felt growing up like I was a person that was always making mistakes. I was a person that I felt like I could never really get life right. Relationships, friendships, work. The amount of times I tried to go back to school, tried to learn something new, and I just felt guilt for just being like, I don't like this. I don't want to do this anymore. And feeling the guilt in that. That's my third line. I'm meant to explore life through trial and error. And what that gives me is resiliency, tenacity. It makes for a great novelist, really. So that permission slip of it's okay to try something and not get it right the first time. It doesn't mean you're a failure. Just try again, and you're going to get it right. You know, you're going to figure it out. So that was another big area that human design really gave me the permission slip for.
Your 3 is unconscious, right?
My 3rd is conscious. My 5 is unconscious.
Okay, so what we're talking about is the profile in our human design. So if you were to look up your human design right now on a free chart, it will likely give you your profile, which is 2 numbers. So there's 1 number and then a slash and then another number. And so the reason why I like suggest you to kind of look at that for yourself is because the way that they show up, or the way that they're suggested to show up, is like the first number is conscious. You're aware of this. And then the second number is unconscious. You're not necessarily aware of this part of yourself. And so when it comes to that idea of like learning information and gaining information, my unconscious is a 1. And I'll have Karina explain it a little bit more, because it was really with us traveling together that really allowed me to actually acknowledge this gift that I have in researching, basically, and being what's called like the hair tech. And I'll have Karina explain it a little bit better. But with my family, my brother is a physicist, my sister is a psychotherapist. School came really easy to them. And I didn't do badly in school. I just didn't have, I have way more of a right brain, way more of a analytical and not a logical way of gaining information. So when studying, for instance, I would have never really considered or thought, especially based on the test results, that I was really good at studying and regurgitating information and learning information. But in reality, I am actually very good at doing research. And to the point that, like, when Karina and I were traveling together, she would just sort of be like, you let me know where we're going, or you let me know what to do or where to go, because I was just so fast at finding this information. And I didn't even realize that this is a gift that I have. And even in university, I was really good at research papers. Like, I did phenomenal on research papers, and it kind of was my like saving grace in acknowledging like, okay, let's go into more classes where I'm doing research papers and less testing. And now I'll let you kind of explain what I'm even talking about in human design language about this 1. Now, like, showing up, I do the research. I figure out if we're planning trips or whatever. I know that I'm so much faster at it. It's so much easier for me. And I trust it now, like, full-heartedly. So even when I'm showing up and preparing for a call or preparing for a workshop, I used to really doubt the knowledge that I would be able to find, and I'd be able to find it so quickly that I'm like, oh, it can't be this easy. Like, I have this false belief about myself that I am not very good in school. And in reality, when I actually owned this unconscious gift of mine, it allowed me to just show up so much more authentically and without any fear or any resistance.
Yeah. It's interesting because there was a couple of times, especially at the beginning of the trip, where you and I would research Google the same thing. And you're like, okay, I found it. I'm like, how did you find it? I could not find it. And that just really goes to show, because I'm a 3-5 profile, I don't have that natural knack of just Googling the right thing. I'm not incapable, but it just doesn't come as natural to me. So the first line in human design, we always use the analogy of a house. So it's the foundation of a home. You need to have a good foundation. And so that's what the first line is. There are researchers, there are investigators. They're here to really explore a topic because there's a natural insecurity to them. So they need to know the things well before they can regurgitate them. So they just have this natural gift. They're the people that will research, they'll look at all the reviews on something before they make a decision. They're the ones who have that knack, have the ability to do the research, to figure it out, to then share that information. And as you mentioned, because it was unconscious, it was the side of you that you don't necessarily recognize within yourself until you shine a light on it. And now you feel empowered in knowing that, no, I know how to do research. I know what I'm doing here. And that, to me, again, that's such a gift that human design provides us. It empowers us to be who we are, right? And not shy away from that.
I'm so grateful for knowing all I know about human design through you. We're coming to the end right now, so I think that I will pull a card in a moment for us.
Yes.
But I did want to like share or say like Karina and I actually have like teamed up together in an offer that I guess we kind of offer it together. But if you do 4 months of coaching with me, then you receive a bonus session with Karina. And this bonus session is like, it's a 2-hour deep dive, or it has the potential to be like a 2-hour deep dive. You get a ebook with it. You get all that you need to know, the recording of the session too, all that you need to know about your human design and what that means, what that looks like. And then often the stressor or the worry is like, okay, so I know this all about myself. How do I start implementing this? So what do I start doing about this? And so the gift of myself as a projector is I am very good at helping to see where we need to address certain areas that are limiting you or blocking you from really blooming into that authentic version of yourself, really blooming into the true version of yourself and releasing the deconditioning. So within our coaching, then we continue to work together with the knowledge that you've gained about your human design, and then all the other things that probably come up that are preventing you at this point from reaching that optimized version of self. And through hypnosis, through teaching techniques that are going to help you change your neural pathways and your thought systems, through energy work, through changing and shifting your own response systems so that you can feel more regulated to move forward in this version of yourself. Because one of the biggest things about starting to do deconditioning is that we are starting to move into a different identity, and that can feel scary, that can feel uncomfortable, and it can be counterintuitive because you're trying to be more of the version of who you want to be and who you are supposed to be in your truth and the truth of who you are, yet it feels unstable, it feels unsafe because your conditioning is still rooting you in giving you this false idea of what safety is. A perfect example that I have, the falseness of conditioning and safety, and it's a more personal example because of like how I grew up, but growing up, it was sort of considered that like if you got a government job, it was like, oh, benefits, ooh, security. My dad is a perfect example. He moved from being in the entrepreneurial business, like the family business, to go back to school so that he could get a job with the government. And what I personally see in that, and now with clients that are coming to me, and if you're listening to this and you have a job with the government and you love all your benefits and everything, this is not for you. I'm not talking to you. Like, enjoy what it is that you're honoring and facilitating. However, I do have some clients that I am currently working with or that I have worked with that are going through transitions, getting themselves out of their government job and stepping into more of an entrepreneurial role for themselves because the security from the government job is not worth the strain that that government job is actually providing to them. It depends on what your goals are and what your ambitions are for yourself. But for those that are really seeking greater freedom and greater sense of autonomy for themselves, sometimes a government role isn't necessarily going to be, or a corporate role isn't necessarily going to be the space that's going to allow you that freedom. Now, for some people, it will because it gives them the ability to go on maternity leave. The things that don't feel like they're working, the things that feel like they're not bringing you a ton of joy, examine them, question them. And the pressures that you're putting on yourself, if you're trying to have children, if you're wanting to get married, if you're single right now and you are feeling really down on yourself because you're not with a partner, maybe question like, where is this pressure coming from? Where is this resentment or frustration coming from? Is it really even coming from yourself, or is it coming from the expectations that have been put on you?
I want to finish with this quote that I found. So it's a quote from Your Human Design, which is written by Shayna and Dana. Online, they're called De Luna. They're two beautiful lights in the human design world that take this complex system and do what I always aspire to do, really make it light, very aligned, very empowering. And in their book, they say, embracing your design is not about becoming something new, but rather shedding learned behaviors to uncover who you've always been underneath. This process is called deconditioning. And I just thought that was perfect.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, I have our trusty card deck that we use here from the Akashic Realm. It's the best deck. We should really get a sponsorship with them because
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
multiple people that have bought this deck in the last few weeks.
I have mine too. Yeah, I would love a sponsorship from them. It's such a great deck.
I'm going to give a little bit more of a specific question today of just what it is that we need to acknowledge or see for ourselves in order to support us with our own deconditioning processes. We've got the Two of Forces, which is a big willow tree with beautiful sun. I think we might have pulled this a couple weeks ago, potentially, but I can't remember if it was this call or if it was a different situation. So the Two of Forces, a big, beautiful willow tree stands in the summer sun. The stately tree is strong and flexible, and this card upright is telling you that you are too. The willow spreads its roots deep and wide, creating a strong foundation that is capable of standing up to anything. Now is the time for you to stand tall and feel the support of the earth beneath your feet. This card indicates a time of calm, so enjoy the peaceful energy now. It also signifies a time of power, perfect for reinforcing your foundation in your work, in your family, in your spirit, and in the depth of your belief in yourself. Just like the willow, you have a peaceful strength, drawn from the waters of your soul and extending through all eternity. Stand confidently in your truth. Take the actions that support the growth of all things wonderful in your life, and know that you are powerful. Closing your eyes for a moment, take a deep breath and feel yourself plant energetic roots through the bottom of your feet, moving down to the very depths of the earth and tapping the resources you need. Notice the strength you feel rising up from this profound source of energy.
That's a perfect card, right? Like just that remembrance of who you are and the strength and power that you have. That's a perfect card.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks,
Before we
Karina.
finish, I
yes.
just want to say one thing before we finish. For everybody that watches this, make sure you give us feedback. We'd love to hear from all of our viewers. How are you liking the podcast? Are there any topics you want us to explore? Tag Skylar and myself, 35 by Design, and I am Skylar Shea. Whenever you're listening to us, share with us. We really want to connect with our community. We are a small but mighty community, and I love each and every one of you. Let us know how you're liking everything.
And if you're watching on YouTube, like and subscribe so that you constantly are able to just get new videos from us when they pop up. It's so cool. I didn't realize that's what liking and subscribing did. That like when you subscribe, I'll post it and then I'll walk away. And then 10 minutes later, an hour later, someone's messaging me being like, I just listened to your episode. And I'm like, wait, how? I didn't even know it was uploaded. Like what? So yeah.
I
like
love it.
Subscribe.
Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll see you next Friday.